Hello, everyone, and welcome back. And thank you for tuning in again. Live today. It is Monday, April 9th. It is noon here live on the Reinventing Tattoo Network. And thank you for joining. Oh, excuse me. Thank you for joining me for Skill Building Monday. If this is working for you, please let us know in the comments and please tag a friend who loves tattoos. And welcome to Guy Aitchison's Reinventing the Tattoo Community, where tattooers, apprentices, collectors, and the curious are encouraged to join in these live streams, real world events, to share and inspire and ultimately create better art and tattoos together. We beam out nearly every day, and with help, have evolved into a quality network of amazing live and on demand tattoo and art shows that have all been receiving rave reviews. You can reinvent the tattoo at www.reinventingthetattoo.com, where you can try it out for free. You do not have to subscribe right away. We've got three different options for you to try it out. The first option is a sample webinar from the Reinventing Tattoo Canon, where you get to go through and preview what it's like to have a full-blown subscription. As well, the second option is to get some free advice from Guy Aitchison about your unique goals. Is always very helpful to have an external resource to see what you need to work on. The third option to go through and try out reinventingthetattoo.com is to take a comprehensive tattoo history course from Jay Brown. For fellow tattoo history nerds such as myself, I cannot stress this enough. The tattoo history course is absolutely awesome. It really goes in depth and really covers a lot of the history of tattooing from way back to today's day and age. As well, you can also find a full event schedule at reinventingtattoo.com, which includes access to full weekly and special event live streams. For example, if you want to jump on today's live stream, you could very easily do that by going to reinventingtattoo.com, clicking on the events area, find the event calendar, and then click on this event, this show in the event calendar. You can also find access to the Reinventing 24/7 channel at reinventingthetattoo.com. It's got 13 different episodes playing at any given time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is accessible on all web-enabled devices. For example, if you're in your studio and you have a web-enabled TV, you can go to reinventingthetattoo.com, type it in, pull it up, and you can stream Reinventing the Tattoo shows live in the studio from a web-enabled device. At reinventingthetattoo.com, you also have access to a whole host of professional development seminars from over 20 world-class tattoo artists. Seminars include things like a skull seminar by Bob Tyrell, a koi fish half sleeve seminar by Andre Malcolm, and a whole lot more. All available for purchase on demand. These are amazing seminars that are super comprehensive in any aspect of tattooing you can imagine. You can also find Reinventing Tattoo in both of the app stores, the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store, as well as our Reinventing the Tattoo YouTube channel, our Reinventing the Tattoo Roku channel, much like our Reinventing the 24/7 channel. It's got 15 to 12, 15 different episodes going at any given time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can also find us in all of the major podcast directories such as Apple and Spotify. Or you can, most people do, and just do a quick browser search for Reinventing the Tattoo, and you'll find it all, except for the book is still currently out of print. So unfortunately, you won't be able to buy a copy of the book. Once again, if this is working for you and coming through clearly, let us know in the comments and in the chat. Let me know I'm not just talking to dead air. And once again, please feel free to anyone you know that loves tattoos. It's by helping to spread the word that these shows can keep going. So we always ask for your help with that. We have a number of weekly staple shows we always encourage people to tune into. Starting off on Mondays at 9 a.m., we have Drawing 4 Hours with James Wisdom, where we get to go through and get back to our basics and fundamentals of being a fine artist in the tattoo world. We get to explain some strategies, explore different fine art concepts in a little bit more depth. And once again, that is Drawing for Tattooers with James Wisdom at 9 a.m. on Mondays. Following that, on Mondays, you have this show, which is the Skill Building Monday group with me, Jason Leeser, and that is at noon on Mondays, where we get to go through and build our skill sets and discuss different types of skills that we have in our toolbox. Whether that's working with Procreate and learning some different tips, tricks, and hacks in Procreate, or painting analog or drawing, all of that and a lot more. This is the perfect place to work on anything like that and tie that into the tattoos that you do. Capping off Mondays at 9 p.m., we have a subscribers exclusive drawing group with Sandy McAndrew from the Reinventing the Tattoo Network. And this Monday evening drawing group is only available to people that have either a Reinventing Tattoo Canon or a Reinventing the Tattoo Evolution subscription, or if you have a Monday evening drawing group subscription as well. So you do unfortunately have to pay to have the Monday evening drawing groups. I can tell you firsthand experience, um, it's absolutely game changing to be able to sit down and work on those skills and have dedicated time every week to work on things that we all know that we should probably be working on. It allows you to hold yourself accountable for making sure that you're and you're improving. But that is only available with a paid subscription. Following that, on Tuesdays at 11 a.m., we have the Tattoo Weekly Show with Gabe Ripley, Lauren Gregory, and Fawn Baker, where we get to go through and discuss current topics in tattooing. Maybe that's legislation being passed, or maybe it's upcoming, events or conventions. Maybe it's new tattoo technology. A whole lot more. That's all available at the Tattoo Weekly Show, 11 a.m. Tuesdays, with Gabe Ripley, Lauren Gregory, and Fawn Baker. Following that, on Wednesdays at noon with the Tattoo Now Show with Gabe Ripley, where we get to do a deeper dive into the business aspect behind tattooing. Maybe it's marketing and advertising strategies or budgeting. Maybe it's client resource management, CRM. Maybe it's a way to really help you maximize your booking process. All of that and a lot more is discussed once again. That's the Tattoo Now Show with Gabe Ripley, Wednesdays at noon. Following that and capping off the week, we have the Tattoo Collecting 101 podcast with Fawn Baker. We get to go through and talk about different things tattoo related. Some of it's about our journeys in the tattoo world. Some of it's about what to look for in a good tattoo artist. A whole lot of other topics are all discussed at the Tattoo Collecting 101 podcast. We have a couple of very special in-person events coming up. May 17th through 19th, Reinventing the Tattoo will be live in Columbus, Ohio at the Hell City Tattoo Convention, where we have special guest tattoo artists that will be in town doing tattoos live, including but not limited to Paul Booth, Derb Morrison, legend Joe Capobianco. I've been looking at his stuff since I was just real young in the tattoo world. Jimmy Litwack, Nico Perez, Ty McEwen, James Vaughn, Jesse Levitt, Ron Earhart, Marshall Bennett, and of course, yours truly will also be there tattooing. Is limited. If you do not have an appointment for the Hell City Tattoo Convention, I would reach out to whatever artist you want to tattoo you now. Get in our books because spots are running out quickly. Following that, June 23rd through 25th, Reinventing Tattoo will be back in Columbus, Ohio for the first ever Tattoopreneur Conference, a tattoo entrepreneurship conference, where we will have 3 days of business, art, and tattoo seminars with special guests Bob Tyrell, Lee Adams, Jake Meeks, James Wisdom, and of course myself. And that will be co-hosted by Dark Age Studios and Rember. If you guys might have heard that name, Rember does absolutely incredible surrealist style tattoos. Take a look at it if you are a tattoo artist and you are looking to really get a little bit better about the business side of tattooing. A look at Stop Up to the Red Tree Gallery, June 23rd through 25th for the Tattoo Entrepreneurship Conference. And say a very special thank you to some of our our sponsors and some of the people that make these shows happen. Starting off with worldtattooevents.com, the largest, most comprehensive resource for tattoo events worldwide. Constantly keeping everything updated. As we know, certain tattoo events and conventions are getting rescheduled like crazy in this post pandemic era. So, if you want the latest and greatest, most up to date tattoo event information coming to a city or town near you, or maybe it's when you plan to visit, maybe you're taking a vacation and you want to go to a tattoo convention in another country. It's how I plan all my vacations. Take a look at worldtattooevents.com. Would also like to thank tattoonow.com, technology for tattooers, the leading edge professional development, management, and digital tools for tattooers of all levels. They're 100% competitive with any type of mailing list or scheduling software out there. So if you really want to pick up the digital tools that will help you get more clients through the door, tattoos that you really want to get, if you really want to streamline your booking process and become the most efficient you possibly can, if you really want to get the most exposure you possibly can and become that number one person in your area to get tattooed by, take a look at tattoonow.com. They've literally been doing this kind of stuff for over 20 years. You cannot go wrong. Would also like to thank the founder and inspiration behind Reinventing the Tattoo, Guy Aitchison at guyaitchison.com. When he is the founder and inspiration behind Reinventing the Tattoo, go to guyaitchison.com where you can pick up a copy of his Biomech Encyclopedia, some of his DVDs, some of his custom fine art prints, the occasional oil painting. And I think he even still has a few custom coil machines in a room that he's willing to sell. So take a look at guyaitchison.com for all of that and a whole lot more. Would also go through and say a very quick and special thank you and shout out to Amy Nichols over at the Apprenticeship Diaries. And this is one of the best resources for tattoo apprentices and tattoo apprentice hopefuls. If you're looking for more information on what makes a good tattoo apprenticeship, if you are really trying to dive into what is it like to go through and learn how to be a tattoo artist, take a look at Apprenticeship Diaries with Amy Nichols and you will not be disappointed. As always, we ask that you post a positive review on the channel. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button down at the bottom of the page. That way you don't miss out on any future episodes or any other shows that might be of interest to you. If you would like to host a Reinventing the Tattoo event, become a sponsor of our community, or if you are looking for a fine art a tattoo critique, you can always email management at reinventingthetattoo.com and we will get back to you just as soon as we can. And that kind of wraps up the intro for today, which is awesome. And we've got going on over here. Let's see. Chats. No chats far. That's always nice. See anyone in the waiting room? Nope. Okay, awesome. Hopefully I'm coming through all right for you guys. Let's see. That should go in just a second. Cool. It's crazy. I'm like a one-man show here. I'm doing all the different screens and stuff like that from here to there and then all the way back. It's kind of crazy. Everything seems to be working well, which is awesome. So I did want to go through and talk a little bit today about convention preparation. I am working at the Hell City Tattoo Convention coming up. That is in Columbus, Ohio. And that is right around the corner. Out of 3 weeks before that convention. And I am falling a little bit behind my standard convention prep. Typically, I like to have about, anywhere from 5 to 10 brand spanking new designs that I like to bring with me to every show. Designs that are only available at conventions. It's kind of nice to have a little of that on order. But I like to have a full set of prints ready to go. I like to have all kinds of stuff. Merch is a great way to go through and supplement kind of the money that you make at tattoo conventions. So I always recommend people have at least something to sell. That way, people that might be interested in getting tattooed by you, if you get fully booked up, at least they can grab a print or a t-shirt or something like that from you. Um, it gives them a little takeaway. Even with what I used to do a few years ago is a whole bunch of little 5x7 or 8x10 prints. And what I would do is any person that I tattooed at the show, I would not only tattoo them, but I would give them a small print for free, kind of as like a nice little takeaway on top of the tattoo, just to show a little bit of appreciation. Within the next 2 weeks, I will be running more prints for the Healthy Show for myself for the booth that I will be working at, which I cannot wait for. Um, it's going to be a great time. I really can't wait, but I do feel like I haven't really prepped enough for it. And I always kind of feel that way unless I'm like seriously overpacking. This year, I will be doing something a bit different. I will be bringing original artwork to sell. Over the past few months, I've been painting my butt off um, anytime that I get a chance. In fact, I will be working on one of those today, just trying to finish one of them up before the Hell City Tattoo Convention. So I fully intend on bringing at least 3 or 4 different framed pieces to sell at the show. If anyone's interested in purchasing an original work of art, I will be happy to oblige. Typically, I only sell originals at conventions simply because I will be able to meet the person that's buying them. If that makes any sense, I know that it's going to go to a good home. It also, while I've been painting a lot, it's been helping me with a lot of the tattoos that I've been creating. Just focusing on contrast and shapes can really, really be beneficial if you're ever interested in really trying to start to take your stuff to another level. I highly suggest painting and drawing on a daily basis, at least for an hour or two a day. Um, at least an hour or two a day. That you're going to get that muscle memory, you're going to get into it, and you're going to start to explore and learn things that you never would have known had you just been, uh, tattooing and waiting to do or try something on another tattoo, right? By painting and drawing, it gives you a way to experiment and to do stuff uh, on a surface that we can very easily throw out if we don't wait out, or we can rework it or paint over it or whatever. It gives us that opportunity where if we're doing that with a tattoo, that client's going to leave the studio and our name is attached to that tattoo. Maybe we don't really want to experiment on a paying client. Not always the best idea, but some people do that, and that's fine. You know, um, as long as that person's willing to kind of go through and understand that they are being a little bit of a guinea pig. Um, and let's see what I got. I got some black and some white. I'm just working on something monochromatic, which I'm going to pull up for you in just a second. And I am kind of at one of the final stages of this painting where I already have my subject matter pretty much rendered down to be exactly where I want it to be. And now I'm just kind of tweaking things a little bit here and there, adding some bright whites, adding some really true dark blacks, just to really kind of push the track, maybe clean up some edges a little bit. And I'm always willing to listen to feedback. If anyone that is out there that is paying attention would like to give me some feedback on, something that I might be able to improve upon, or you think might need a little bump in contrast, or maybe something that you see that just looks weird a little bit. By all means, feel free to shoot me a comment while I'm painting, and I'll be happy to go through and discuss that. As well, if anyone has any question at any point in time, I'm more than happy to answer those. I'm just kind of picking out some brushes to use real quick. And we'll go with this guy too for some of these dark areas, just to blend it out. There we go. That'll do. And this stuff, for anyone out there that paints with acrylics, is like an absolute godsend. This is acrylic glazing liquid. And will allow you to get that oil painter without having to go through and actually use oils. I use a lot of this stuff because I like to work in glazes and build the look up. So, and I don't know. Okay, cool. So that's going. Grab a sip of magic bean juice. Cool. This a little bit more centered. So this is the one of the paintings I will be having for sale at Hell City Tattoo Convention. And as I mentioned before, I'm just kind of going through and trying to push the contrast a little bit more, and just really kind of spice some things up. I don't too much left to do with it, but I know that there's certain areas where I can really draw in some bright whites. Maybe a little bit here. Just right along this edge. We'll just bump that out a little bit more. And then maybe a little bit up here as well. So I've been working on over the past week or two. I haven't really put a whole tremendous amount of time into it. Maybe 20 hours or 30 hours or something like that when all is said and done. A lot of it just comes down to blocking in your tones first, your base tones, and then working from there to refine and detail things. It's always the best way to go about doing it. You can do it the same way that you do tattoos. You can tattoo it exactly the same way. No one's saying you can't. To be able to go through and really kind of just block in basic, mid-tones and then work your details from there, and pulling the contrast to go through and create, that nice layered kind of almost old painterly look for your tattoos. I know if you have not heard of the Fireside Tattoo Network, I know that the primary guy that's on there, Jake Meeks, I know he tends to tattoo a bit like that, where and he talks about it in one of his podcast episodes. He'll go through and maybe he'll lay down some midtones, and he'll take things from there, and he can push and he can pull the contrast, go a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, and he can build it up just like it was an oil painting. Maybe we'll blend some of this in because this looks a little harsh. Give me a little bit more of this glazing medium. Now, anytime I use any of the glazing medium, I know for a fact it's going to heal up a little bit lighter and a little bit more translucent. And that's only because by mixing that in with the paint, it's making it a lot more translucent, so that you can actually see through it quite a bit more. So I do always try to keep that in mind, even though it may look a bit darker right now. I know that this area here that I just laid in is gonna, once it dries, is gonna dry a bit more like this. I used to make the mistake all the time of thinking that the paint that you see it's wet is gonna be the way that it dries, but just like in tattooing, you have to remember that as the tattoo heals, that color is going to change slightly. Maybe it's going to become, especially if you're working with a cover up, maybe it's going to become a bit more translucent. You might through it a bit more. Maybe it's going to be, based on the underlying skin tone that you're working with. Maybe it's going to, darken up a bit, or maybe it's going to stay a bit lighter. So you always have to factor that in. And that's why I don't really enjoy working on canvas that's pure white to begin with. Always tint it or tone it down a bit, just so that way it's a bit more akin to working with an actual tattoo. Plus it really allows you to go through and really push and pull your lights and your darks. This is what I'm using now would be equivalent to like a 9-pound shader in brush form. I think it's like it's just like a small round. But if I'm doing this as a tattoo, this is exactly the size that I would be using in order to get some of these sharp little details. It was almost like up until a year or two ago, and this is going to be really, really bad, but up until about a year or two ago, I had completely and totally like put it out of my mind that needle companies actually made small round shaders, and those are absolutely amazing for getting tight, tiny little details into things. You can really use them to just refine edges, really build up detail, texture, and you can really use those to really put some nice bells and whistles onto a lot of the tattoos that you do. Um, I'll go as small as a 5 round shader if I need to. I'm not really a big fan of threes, like loose threes. To me, I don't get it. I'd rather just use like a 5 liner or something like that. Um, I'll use loose 5, loose 7, loose 9. Lately, I've really been in love with a company called Liberty Tattoo Supply. They make a brand of tattoo cartridges called Vulcan cartridges. Absolutely been in love with their bold 11 round shape lately. They have been absolutely incredible. If you have never heard of Vulcan tattoo needles, take a look. Their their bold shaders are absolutely amazing. You can use them to line, you can use them to shade, you can use them for you know building things up, or really packing stuff in there. It's a nice semi loose configuration. It's not super super loose, so you can still control it, but it is really really nice to go through and be able to have the flexibility to shade with it if you need to. So just like if I was tattooing, you'll notice me skipping around a bit. I was working over here, then I went over here, then I went over here. Now I'm back over here a little bit. Giving everything a chance to dry and kind of settle in. And the reason that is because I typically tend to paint like I tattoo. You don't want to overwork or over damage one area. So skip around a bit, hop around the piece, do a bit here, a bit there, especially if you're working with some colorful stuff. Go through, find an area where you do all your dark blue, and hop around. Do here's dark blue, here's dark blue over here. Here's this gets a spot of dark blue over here. This area gets a spot of blue, and now I'm going to go through and I'm going to build my mid-tone blue into all of those areas, and now I'm going to build my light tone blue into that in all of those areas. I'm going to start to mix in some nice yellow, and next thing you know, I'm going through and it's like, oh, well, here's a yellow spot, here's a yellow spot. So you're constantly moving throughout the piece. What that's doing is that's allowing certain areas to calm down while you're working in other areas. You can maintain maximum efficiency without going through and really damaging the skin. And it's something was a little piece of advice that I was given by a guy who's way better than I am, is always hop around, always move around, and then move on. Work on an area and then move on. That way, you're really not gonna one up. And if you give it just a little bit of time to go through and calm down, you'll be surprised at how well areas heal. Even if you go back into them 3 and 4 times. Let's hit some bright whites. Bright white. We'll do a tiny little dot here. Right on the upper edge. Same thing here. This gets a bit of bright white. Maybe we'll blend this area back a little bit more. Just blend that in. If anyone out there were to ever watch me start a painting, I will go through and I will use like a liner brush to actually line out a piece in, basically like a gray wash ink first, in order to go through and make sure that, you know, all of the areas and hard edges that I know I want to have be super hard edges, I know that those are going to stay super hard edges. It just gives me a boundary with which to work on. A little bit more really bright white over here. Just kind of dab that in. Almost like we were scumbling. Cool. And we'll give this another little dab here. Kind of just bring this area out a bit more. You know, just give it a little bit of a kind of bumpy, almost rough highlight. Nothing super slick or super smooth. When I give it almost like a texture. And what that's going to do is create the illusion of texture. Back to this spot a little bit. A couple of little dots here and there. Then maybe I'll add a little bit. Front edge of this guy will catch the light a little bit. If anyone has any questions, comments, anything like that, let me know by all means. Let me just check and see if anyone else has decided to join us. Some. One thing I always like to try to do whenever I'm working on a tattoo or I'm painting is I'll kind of go through and I'll lean back a little bit and I'll blur my vision a little bit and kind of squint to look at the overall shapes just to see, you know, if what I'm doing is going to actually be working. I'll get a little bit of a highlight there. Same thing there. We'll accent. It's tiny, almost invisible kind of crack that I have going on over here. That'll just give it a little bit of an edge, a little bit of a lighter edge. Maybe a little bit more light. This tiny little ridge right around this cavity and this tooth is going to get a little bit of a brighter highlight. And I'll probably blend that in a little bit more. All this kind of like tiny little detail stuff I'd always save for like the last session, just to tweak certain tiny little things after a tattoo comes back in. You get to see it fully healed. It's awesome. You love it, but maybe there's just a little bit of tweaking that you like to do here and there. That is what I always save for the last session. Maybe just add some bright white, maybe, kind of bump the contrast, give it some really dark darks, just in certain spots to really emphasize the stuff that you want to emphasize. And it's always good to save that till the final session, so that way you can get some really nice pictures of it right afterwards. Um, their own way of doing things, and that's cool. I'm always down to discuss different alternative approaches. This is just kind of what I found works for me. So by all means, if anyone has an alternative approach, I'm more than happy to listen, and I'm more than happy to have that discussion. Um, I'm probably one of the furthest things from a gatekeeper industry you can ever meet. Uh, I believe in sharing knowledge. I believe that it's through the sharing of knowledge that we all advance. As a very good friend of mine, Seth Mushrush, once stated, "Tide lifts all boats." I want competition. I want people to turn around and do better than me, so that it will me to do better myself. And that's why I enjoy surrounding myself with artists that I know are functioning and focusing on so much of a higher level than I am. That's why I'm very excited to go and work at the Hell City Tattoo Convention this year, um, to work alongside guys like Bob Tyrell, Paul Booth, Dante Almodovar, guys that I really look up to, guys that I really admire just for their discipline, in the craft, but also for, um, just what they've been able to achieve and what they've been able to learn over the years. Just by being around people like that, you'd be surprised to pick up just by talking to them. Um, and just tiny, tiny little things that you pick up if you read between the lines. You can really take that knowledge and concept and really bring that over into the work that you do. And next, it's going to be a game changer. Let's just go with a little bit more of like a light glaze here. Don't want this to be super bright, but I just want to tweak it out just a hair. Sometimes I'll use my finger and just kind of brush some stuff in, or smooth it in. It's just something I've been doing since art school. Sometimes I like to call it finger painting. Sometimes I'll use a paper towel, but not typically. And then I did notice an area that I think needs a little bit more of like a lighter glaze, and that's here. And I'm just going to glaze this with a bit of thinned out white. And then as that dries, once again, that's not going to be a super bright white. It's just going to lighten this area up enough for me to see some of the subtleties, and for me to create the right amount of contrast that I'm looking for. A little bit more here. And I'm always very careful to try to not overwork a painting, because we've all done that at some point in time, where you sit down and you turn around and you're like, man, I should have just left that alone. Really did not want to take it to this extent. And now I have to go back through and rework all of these areas just to make sure that everything looks right and blends right. It's got the right lighting. So I'm very careful to work to build up what it is that I'm making. Because Lord knows I've overworked plenty of projects in my life, to the point that, get tired of looking at them, and you know that there's no way you can really come back from it. So it's kind of like, okay, well, um, I'll throw that one out and I'll move on to the next one. A little bit of water just to thin this out a little bit more. And this is one of those things that I really enjoy using that glazing medium with. Um, if I really don't like it, I can always take a paper towel and I can blot it. I'm about to do and do it again, because it extends the workability time of the acrylic paint that I'm using. So I can go through and blot it. And it's still a little bit okay. I wanted it to be a little bit on the lighter side. Now I'm just going to blend in a little bit of a gray tone that I'm mixing up right now. And then this should give me just enough gray. And that back in right there at that top edge. Just enough. Same thing with here. I want to keep this area just a hair darker to allow the edge of the edge of that nostril to kind of come forward just a little more. Just creates a nice little subtle edge in between these two shapes. Which will allow the individual areas to stand out more from each other. A little bit more light or dark. There we go, that's perfect. And we'll just blend that right in. You know, when I paint like I tattoo, and I tattoo like I paint. So for me, there's a huge crossover between the two. People might not see that. They might not recognize that there is that kind of a crossover there, and that's why not everyone is going to understand that. But it's something that I've really started to pay attention to in the past few years, is that there really is a crossover, in my opinion, between any kind of a secondary medium that you're using. It doesn't matter if it's liquid acrylic or watercolor or oil or whatever. There's always going to be a correlation between the medium that you use to create art outside of tattooing and the tattoos that you do. There we go. Now we go back to our pure white. we're going to give this a bit more of a nice highlight edge. Just kind of sweep that out as we move upwards. And that's going to give us a nice little sharp edge right along this line that's really going to stand out and really help separate out the shape of this skull. And it's going to create an effect called a perceived line. Perceived line is when your mind's eye will go through and finish a line without you ever really noticing. It will create a shape in your head and give you the concept that something is continuing, even if it doesn't continue. I was recently reading an art article on that concept, and it blew my absolute mind because I had never really, thought about the kind of connection there and how your mind will create shapes and lines and whatnot without you ever, really realizing it. And lo and behold, it's absolute fact. So I've been trying to incorporate a bit more of that principle into the paintings and drawings that I do ever since. Does anyone have any questions? Hey, Mr. Iron Hex. Not quite sure what you meant there, but you already see from when I started to where I am now, you can already start to see this real nice bright white shift and moving in this direction. And that's going to draw your eye, right, to move along that line. And my hope is that this little bit down here that I did, this nice little highlight, is going to help bring your eye back around in that direction. I'm not really going to put too many other bright white highlights anywhere just because I don't really need it, especially with where my light source is. I would actually prefer to stay away from using a whole lot of other pure bright whites in this just because I really want the eye to move, and it's kind of hard to see. I really want your eye to move in this direction and then come back around, right? Even if it comes lower, I'm okay with that. But by using white in very selective areas, draw your eye around the piece, it can really help you rotate your visual movement in that kind of a circular, almost spiral pattern to go through and kind of draw your eye to point people where you want them to look. So it's something that, I try to pick on and I try to utilize as often as I can. Where did I put? I know I had, yeah, this guy. This will work. I am going to go through with a little bit of thinned out white and blend that harsh highlight that I have up here. I'm just blend that out a bit into this area of gray tone. Just tone it down ever so slightly. I still want it to be a very, very brilliant white highlight, but I also don't want to create a pure white line, um, just because that's not how it would look in real life. So I'm just trying to tone it down the best I can, just a hair. Just like an off-white, and then have that fade out and fade back. A little bit more dark. And this is all acrylics. This isn't gouache. This isn't liquid acrylic. This isn't oil. This is all just straight acrylics. Most of it I was using, I forget the name of the brand, but it's like a really nice, very heavily pigmented, professional grade acrylic paint for most of this. These pure bright white highlights and the pure dark blacks that I'm going to be putting in just a minute. I'm actually using Turner's acrylic gouache, which is super opaque, but it's also super flat, very matte, so it's not going to create a shine or anything like that, which is exactly what I want to go for. I don't want this shiny. I want it to be very, very flat and matte. And that's only because I've never been a huge fan of like that super like liquid gloss kind of look. When it comes down to painting, I find that can actually be kind of distracting sometimes and take away from your experience of viewing the painting as a whole. So I always like to go with like more of a matte varnish. If it goes well, I will be varnishing this later today, so that way I can give that plenty of time to have that ready for the Healthy Tattoo Convention where this will be for sale. Give this just a hair lighter, and then I'll take a little bit of dark. Too much dark, so I'm going to thin that out a little more, even more than that. And then this is just going to get a nice little tone down. That way this edge isn't quite so prominent. And then I'm also going to take this and blend this off white. Kind of blend that in there. Good. Tone the area down just a hair as well. I just want these reflections to be super, super subtle. I want them to be there just because it's going to catch the edge of the light just a hair. But I don't want it to be overpowering and compete with any of the other lighter areas that I have going on. Same thing here. I'm just going to tone this down a hair. And this is all just kind of like hairs, because from a distance, you won't be able to really see any of the super crazy subtleties. And that's by the nature of viewing distance. But it's something that I'm not going to be able to sleep at night knowing that I left an area that could look better. And I didn't do anything to it. And let's take a look. Anyone else wanted to join in? Nope. Okay. We'll probably stick around for another couple minutes. There was one area that I really wanted to hit while I had a minute. And that was... And the reason why I said before that I use this is all acrylic is because to me, acrylic gouache is just acrylic. It's just really opaque. To me, I don't really differentiate between acrylic gouache because when it dries, it's permanent, and regular acrylic paint because, I mean, if it's got the same principles of acrylic once it dries, what's the difference? This area here, I did want to go through and darken up just and just really kind of push this tooth that I have here that is so obscured and out of focus. You can't even really tell it's a tooth, but I know it's a tooth. But I did want to tone that down even more just to really bring that and push that to the background a bit more. And I'll probably leave like a little bit of a light on it just because it is off black. There we go. Now I'm really going to go through and clean up some of these hard lines that I have in here for these teeth and these cracks. I'm just using a super tiny little watercolor brush for this because I can get a real nice sharp crisp edge on it. Areas like here, which I don't even know if you guys can really see it or not. It's just going to get a little bit of this pitch black in there. Same thing here. Just to really create this shape and really refine this edge a little bit more. That to me is one of the big things about realism painters and anyone that paints a photorealistic style is that you'll notice all of their edges are super sharp and clean. So that's kind of what I'm really going for. And you can have fuzzed out edges if you want to, but that I typically try to keep towards the background because that's going to, anything with that level of detail is going to create amount of focus, right? And sometimes we want things to be out of focus. Not all the time, but sometimes. So I really try to go through and just really emphasize and clean up some of these really hard edges in the area that I really, really want to be perfectly crisp and clean to really show and utilize focus in those areas. And because this is a super dark matte black, it actually appears even darker when it's dried, which I absolutely love. Because as we all know in the tattoo industry, just like with the painting, not all black paints are created the same. Some densities, some have different tones and pitches, some are cool blacks, some are warm blacks. Um, I've been really playing around with a type of black called bone black by Golden, which is really cool. It can be pretty dark, but at the same time, it's also kind of translucent. So you kind of have to be careful about that. And good. Which, by the way, if anyone is ever curious as to what black I've found that I really, really like in tattooing, um, take a look at Allegory Max, like their super black, dark black, or max black, or whatever they call it. That stuff is awesome. Goes in super easy. Um, actually thins out pretty well with water or witch hazel, but it's really easy to work with. Really dark. I've tried like every type of black ink on the market. You name it. I've tried ones from Silverback. I've tried Panthera. I've tried Kingpin has called the One. I used that for a little while. I even went old school and was using Talons and Pelican, a mix of that for a while. Uh, I've used Sumi liner black. I've used Sumi heavy black. I've used pretty much anything and everything, trying to find the one I really like the most. And so far, this allegory, like Super Max Black or whatever it's called, is absolutely awesome. Just going to go through, add some super dark blacks in some of these little pits. The ones that I want to really be super, super dark at least. Good. Some of these are fine. That area is good. I'll add this down here. Good. Those are good. Just tweak this little edge in here a little bit more. Not that I think it's really going to matter a whole lot, but I'm just cleaning up a whole bunch of stuff. And then we'll go with a little bit of the inside of the nostril here. And then I'm going to thin this black out a tiny bit, because I know it's going to dry a little bit lighter. I'm just a hairline dark edge, just to kind of bump the contrast here a little bit more. Going right up against that kind of like highlight area that I have, because I really want to emphasize that. And if everything's light, nothing's light. And if everything is super dark, nothing is super dark. You lose a lot of contrast when you go through. If you're trying to go for super high contrast, make sure that you put some super, super darks right next to bright, bright whites, and that is alone will create that depth of contrast that you're looking for, because your eye needs something to compare it to. Right? If your eye doesn't have anything in the vicinity to compare it to, how's it ever going to understand what's really, really dark and what isn't quite so dark? It's human nature. And then what I'm going to do, and I don't know if I've got the room to do this here, I'm actually just going to take, yeah, this will do. I'm going to take a little bit of the super crazy dark, dark, dark matte black, and I'm actually just going to sweep it in from here. Hopefully you guys can see this all right. Because I really want this edge along the top of the skull to be super, super dark. Because once again, by comparison, your eye is going to see super, super dark black, like black that's dark, but maybe it's not like totally dark. So it's going to give your eye something to compare it to really kind of show that, hey, really, really pushed back and there is no light in this area at all. So you have to remember to give your eye something to compare whatever value you're putting down to. So I'm just kind of brushing this in lightly, using the dry brush technique almost, where I'm just kind of lightly working right off the tips of the bristles, just like I would be fanning it in right off my pins if I was working with a mag. Just kind of very lightly brushing it in, not laying anything down super thick, just kind of lightly fanning it in or feathering it in and then blending it out. This brush is pretty dry, by the way. That's called like a dry brush technique, because you can get some really nice light feathery blends. I did just rinse it off, so it's probably going to retain some water, so you got to make sure it's like super, super dry before you can use that technique again. Sometimes I'll actually have multiple brushes at the same size, and I'll go through and while one's drying, I'll use the other one. While that one's drying, I'll pick up the first one because I know the first one's super dry. I don't typically like to do that just because you spend a whole lot of money on brushes, and sometimes it's absolutely unnecessary to have that many brushes, to have like 3 or 4 of the same kind. But sometimes it does come in handy. Once again, just working right off the tip of these bristles, just kind of like fanning it out. Just like I would be if I was tattooing. I don't know if you guys can actually see the difference that's made. I don't know if I've got the right lighting going on. Maybe I'll turn this up a bit more. Well, that's not gonna do. Don't know if that's gonna help at all or not, but worth a shot. So I don't know if you can actually see what I just did. This area here, right along the back of the skull, is now a super, super dark, super matte black. When compared to this other flat black that I was using above it here at the edge, even though this is a flat matte black, it doesn't have the same pigment density as what I just did in. So this is actually going to appear like a much darker edge, and it's going to be a lot more black than what's above it that's already dry. And that's only because 2 different companies, 2 different pigment densities on the blacks. More pigment density equals a darker black. So, just like if you try to use like a dynamic black versus something like an Allegory Max Black or a Panthera Black. Like Panthera's Super Black or Triple Black or whatever it's called is going to be way darker than Dynamic. Any day of the week, no comparison there at all. You're talking about 2 different solar systems of, pigment density. I've used dynamic True Black or Triple Black or whatever they call that. And that works all right, but it's not, once again, you're talking about different pigment densities that are going to have an impact on how truly dark and black it is. And I've found that the Allegory is the better of any of the ones that I've used. Panther is good. It's super, super dark. I do like that as like a good backup, but Panthera can be a little bit thicker of a pigment. And when it comes down to ease of use and versatility of use, I like something that I can thin out a lot easier. Pantera is so thick and dense of a black, you almost can't use it for anything, even their liner black. You almost can't use it for anything except for outlining. It does not thin out well. You cannot get a good wash out of it. I've tried everything. And it doesn't happen. And that's because it is so dense that, it's almost impractical to use for anything other than, say, a line or a tribal fill. That's why I've really been attracted to the Allegory Ultra Black or Max Ultra, whatever they call it, their new one, like super dark. Because that one, even though it is super dark and super dense, it still thins out really, really well. Yeah, I used Dynamic for a while, and I just wasn't really happy with how it would heal up. So I couldn't use it anymore. Like, to me, it healed up almost like gray as opposed to like a true black. And for the last little bit that I will do today, I'm just going to mix up some more of this super matte black. And I'm just going to hit the edge. Just clean this edge up a little bit more. Once again, giving your eye something to visually see the difference in when it comes down to super, super dark versus pure bright, brilliant white. Just really want to emphasize that contrast. Hopefully you guys didn't too glare from the light that I put on, but if you are, tell me and I'll turn it back down. But yeah, cool. Let's see. Got some good drapery going on in the background. Probably back through. The crazy thing is I can tweak and play with any aspect of any painting that I have done in the past, I don't know how many years. Literally until the day that I died, just trying to get it perfectly right. Like, this area, I think, could be a little bit more bright, even though I do that and become less bright over there. But just having some real nice bright whites to the darker tones, and especially right along this edge here, is really going to be helpful. So we'll just lay some of that in there, kind of get, and then we'll take a bigger blender. Then we'll just feather that out. And that should give me the desired look that I'm going for. Cool. Well, hope you guys Hope you guys got something out of today. Thanks for tuning in, for watching. I'll switch this back over here. My name is Jason Leeser. You can find me on Instagram at Inc. And you can find that right up here. Go through. Feel free to send me a DM if you're looking to get tattooed at me. Happy to tattoo you. Got plenty of openings available on Friday and Saturday. Sunday is going to be kind of tricky, but if it's something small, I might be able to get you in. Otherwise, thank you guys all for tuning in today very much. Really appreciate it. It's because of people that watch that we can keep these shows going. So please, once again, tune. Um, keep those hands busy. Keep yourself motivated. Keep yourself going. If you're not painting, draw. If you're not drawing, hopefully you're tattooing. And if you're not tattooing, I hope you're doing one of the other ones too. So it's something that we can all every just to help us, even if it's only for an hour a day, just helps us keep everything moving forward. So until next Monday, which will be episode 150, party, yay. So we've got episode 150 coming up next Monday at noon here live on the Reinventing the Tattoo Network. Once again, this has been Jason Leeser. Thank you for tuning in for Skill Building Monday. I will catch everyone next week. Till then.